It has been 4 years since Kern and his last performance in Korea. We asked him how he felt performing for his Korean fans for the first time in 4 years.
Oh, I'm definitely excited. I love the Korean audiences whenever I perform here. They're very enthusiastic and supportive, and there's nothing more exciting than walking out on stage in front of a bunch of fans and friends, because your audiences want you to succeed. They want you to do well, and you can feel that love and support coming towards you whenever you perform.
Before the actual performance starts, he steps up to the stage for a final rehearsal.
Let's work with this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
For the concert, he will play various pieces, including Return to Love, a song that earned him recognition and popularity when it was featured in the Korean drama series Autumn in My Heart. Kern starts playing Return to Love with a clarinetist. When he visits Korea, he usually collaborates with a clarinetist, violinist, and cellist in an ensemble. He draws out a more lyrical sound through the collaboration with different instruments.
Korea has a very special place in my heart. The reason is because Korea was the first place I ever came to where I got to play with other musicians, and that meant that it was the first place where I got to bring my music to my fans the way I always dreamed it should go. And because of that, whenever I come to Korea, I always have the very best musicians to help make my music the best it can be, and that's what makes Korea very special in my heart.
음악처럼 되게 따뜻하신 분이고 정말 유머도 많이 있으시고, 그래서 되게 이분 음악을 들으면 좀 봄의 느낌이 많이 나는데 그런 느낌처럼 인간적인 느낌도 되게 따뜻한 그런 느낌 많이 받았습니다.
Meanwhile, the audience is starting to gather. They all seem excited to listen to Kern's lyrical and gentle melodies live.
너무 기대가 많고요. 크고. 그리고 또 오늘 또 어떤 곡을 보여주실지 너무 궁금해요.
가을 동화를 많이 좋아했었는데요. 가을 동화에서 느껴지던 그러한 정서를 이 가을에 또 한 번 더 제 가슴에 담아보기 위해서 왔습니다.
Kern's music has gained great popularity in Korea. We hope his music rings in the hearts of his fans for many more years to come. Wow, good. That looks like a really fun concert. Wish I had been there, you know. Well, I heard you started playing the piano when you were an 18-month-old baby. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
That's what everybody tells me. I don't remember.
Of course. You don't even remember sitting at the piano or anything? All my memorable life I could play. The story goes that everybody was watching TV when they heard Silent Night coming from the piano in the living room. And everybody walked into the living room, and here's this little kid with his hands over his head, ding, 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 ding. Mm-hmm. By the time I was 2 years old, I could play 20 Christmas carols with both hands, they say. All right, good. Well, then you started taking piano lessons when you were 4.
Right.
You remember
that,
of course.
From a friend of the family.
What did you start with?
You start with what everybody starts with. You start with scales, you start with simple pieces,
little exercises, and then you move on to smaller classical pieces and so on.
Did you know that there was a particular genre of music style that you wanted to do as you were going into your teens or anything?
Well, I started out studying classical. I gravitated toward jazz in my growing up years, and came to composition maybe a little later in life. But I'm always looking for new sounds and new styles and new things to try and do.
Why did you move away from classical?
I didn't really want a career where one missed note could be the end of your career, and it was kind of not really interesting to interpret the music of other people.
All right, that makes total sense. That's why I moved away from classical. But yeah, so then how did you come up on jazz? Because I mean, you could have done rock and roll, or you could have gone into any other kind of music.
Well, I gravitated toward jazz because it maximized my strengths, the ability to memorize and the ability to improvise over small forms. And it didn't make much of my deficits, like the inability to write down music at the time or to read music fast enough to learn music fast. And so jazz was a perfect fit when I discovered it.
That makes total sense. Is it proper to ask when you were, as you said, becoming avisual?
I was born with the poor vision that I have now. I mean, those of you in television will appreciate this. Try and imagine looking at a television image shot with gauze over the lens.
Yes.
Okay? It's the sort of thing that characteristically is used to signify this is a dream sequence. That's what my visual world looks like. Okay?
Well, but that didn't push you towards music at all, I don't think. You were naturally talented.
But it kept me there. I mean, while my friends were playing baseball, I was playing piano.
All right.
And stuff like that.
Okay, makes total sense. Well, when did you then decide that you'd want to go into composition? I mean, jazz is sort of composition. It encompasses it. But so give us a little history of your journey. You started with classical, then you gravitated towards jazz, and then...
And then I started, making up my own stuff when cassettes came along and you could record things. And then when computers came along, I thought, eventually a personal computer is going to be able to make notation possible.
Right.
So then, once that became possible, you could sit and type notation instead of having to do it with a pen and ink.
Right.
And I thought, this is a breakthrough for a blind guy like me. I can now write down the notes as I hear them, and I can write them down for instruments that I can't physically play.
Right.
And that's when the whole world began to change.
Amazing. All right. Yeah, do you have a mentor or someone who supported you in your beliefs of becoming the musician that you are today?
I would say the greatest single musical influence I ever had was the great jazz pianist George Shearing, who is still a lifelong dear friend. But his musical style, the chords that he played, and the touch that he had on the piano, the special ringing, singing sound that he made whenever he touched the thing, was always the gold standard that I measured myself against. And said, if I can make the piano sound the way he made it sound, I'd be having a good day.
All right. Well, what was the most difficult thing about actually physically learning the piano?
The greatest challenge about acquiring repertoire was if you couldn't read music fast enough, then you had to memorize by ear.
Right.
And unfortunately, playing by ear has such a, play it by ear, at least in English, has such a negative, haphazard, disorganized connotation. And it's anything but. Because what you're really doing is you have to be supremely organized and highly concentrated to memorize and to retain all the nuance of great music so that when you play it, it still sounds great.
Right. Okay, interesting. All right. Well, we are joined by New Age pianist Kern today. We'll be right back.